well, we'll get to the reasons why UFC 153's card is in flux, but let's just say the main event and the same main event have been scrapped, and they're looking at having Dave Herman fight Antonio Rodrigo Nogueira. This would not be the main event. They're looking at adding a main event to replace the main event. And Frankie Edgar has been pulled from the show because of the injury to Aldo, and they're looking to build the Aldo-Edgar fight.
This is the new Calgary. This is the new cursed card.
Jeez. All right, well, let's touch on the news, and then we'll go to what fights have been switched, and there's a lot on here, Stevie, so let's just go to the news first. And we're going to start with the World Series of Fighting, sorry. There was a story this past week where Bas Rutten, Kurt Angle, and I'm going to screw this third name up, Steve. You got to help me out with this one.
Right. Well, say it, and I'll tell you if you got it right or not.
Michael Chiavello. Mike Chiavello. Yeah, okay. I had it right.
The voice Michael Chiavello. How can you get that wrong?
I thought it was a different person for a second.
Good night, I right.
Who wants a KO for Christmas? I know.
Yeah, can't possibly botch that. Come on now. But
I know some names I can.
Kurt Angle had to pull out of it because he's no longer eligible, which he probably shouldn't have been anyway due to his contract elsewhere. He probably shouldn't have been able to be a commentator on somebody else's sports show.
They're saying it's a conflict of interest. That's the official word from Kurt Angle.
Yeah, conflict of interest equals contract does not allow it.
Did you hear who they're picking or tapping to replace Angle's in the chair there?
Hopefully Paul Lazenby.
No, I'm going to say this name right, Stevie. Renzo Gracie.
Oh, that's right. Well, that's perfect timing considering he just beat up a couple of muggers.
Yeah, that leads right to my next story, in fact. Renzo Gracie live tweeted an attempted mugging this past week, and the attempted muggers are wearing raccoon eyes now.
Yeah, for those who don't know what that means, it's basically the Brazilian way of saying, this is what you get for fucking me up. You get knocked out, and then I give you a punch under each eye and give you two black eyes. That's called giving somebody the raccoon.
Yeah, those poor guys didn't know what hit them. And the thing is, Renzo Gracie doesn't look like a very imposing guy. He's not like Brock Lesnar with the tattoos and the muscles. But these muggers just, oh man, bad timing on their part.
It's hilarious reading his tweets about it. He's like, do they know who they're messing with? My blood's quickening. I miss Brazil. This is fun. He's like getting excited about being mugged.
Oh man, takes all types, I guess.
Yeah, but you can tell he clearly enjoyed the fact that these two idiots had no idea who they were fooling with. He knew they were going to have a bad night.
There's an interesting story here, and I know you're going to have something to say. Tito Ortiz has been quoted as saying this week, Jon Jones is mentally weak.
Okay.
That's pretty a ballsy statement there.
It's not anything that Chael Sonnen hasn't really said, but it's also a little bit odd coming from Tito, the guy who's chronically complaining about injuries, to call somebody else mentally weak. I don't know if I buy that coming from him.
Yeah, didn't he walk away from a fight with Chuck Liddell because of a back injury?
Yeah, and every time he's lost, he said, I didn't come into a fight 100%. Well, guess what, Tito? Nobody does.
Yeah. Now, there's been a controversial topic, and it's been reported on Wrestling Observer, it's been Figure 4 Online, it's been all over the internet message boards, and I'm just going to read it, Stevie, and I'll let you go off on it. Paul Heyman backs Brock Lesnar as a UFC Hall of Famer and doubts his return to the Octagon. What's wrong with that statement?
Which part are you complaining about? The fact he won't return or the fact he's a Hall of Famer?
Is he a Hall of Famer?
Oh, I like Paul Heyman's argument when he says, yeah, he's 5-3, but look at the 5 and look at the 3. And based on that statement alone, I kind of agree with him because who else had such a quick meteoric rise to becoming heavyweight champion and probably would still be heavyweight champion if health issues hadn't taken down his ability to perform?
Yeah, but at that time the heavyweight division wasn't as stacked as it is now.
You can't make that argument. That's not a fair argument to make. Brock Lesnar fought the best guys that were available at the time and beat the best guys that were available. You can't go back and say that because Chuck Liddell didn't fight Jon Jones that Chuck Liddell wasn't a great UFC light heavyweight champion. I don't buy that kind of thinking.
How many times did Brock Lesnar defend that title?
Twice that I can think of.
Okay. I don't know, I think there has to be a prereq. Maybe you have to have more than 10 fights to be a Hall of Famer.
Look, if the qualification for a Hall of Fame is the impact you make on a sport and the lasting impression after you leave the sport, then he's got it.
The only point I will concede is that, when Brock Lesnar was on the card, the buy rates went through the roof, and they haven't been back since.
Exactly. Just in terms of business impact alone, Brock Lesnar was a difference maker. He was a superstar in the world of MMA. And would be if he came back for another fight, but he's probably not going to.
That's a shame. I know his diverticulitis is always a concern, and he's making more money for less work on a reduced schedule right now with the WWE, and he doesn't need to fight anymore. He's already won the titles, nothing to prove. There's no big super fight. The only way I could think of Brock Lesnar coming back for one fight is against Fedor, and we both know that'll never happen.
Yeah, Dana White got involved in a thread on the Underground about this, so I'm glad you brought that up. Apparently, there was a discussion going on there about Brock Lesnar and Fedor and what a great fight that would be. And Dana White actually logged on to the Underground and jumped in the middle of the thread and said, how many of you guys would like to see this fight? And maybe he thought that people would be kind of blasé on it because it's unrealistic. They're both out of MMA, but in fact, nobody was blasé about it. Everybody jumped on and told Dana, yes, I want to see that fight. Yes, make that fight happen. Come on, Dana, you can do it. And he's like, guys, I couldn't sign Fedor before he was retired. How likely do you think it is I'll get him now?
Oh, yeah, we mentioned that last week, Stevie, and I think this conversation, it built off of that. I reported that story last week, and people are still talking about it this week. It's not going away, and this Hall of Fame talk just is adding fuel to the fire.
That's true. It all sort of ties together in a neat little bundle. So it goes around and comes back again, which is what the internet is all about, speculation and discussion.
Looks like King Mo will be wrestling for TNA in October and be fighting for Bellator 3 months later in January.
Yeah, so for all you people out there who, as Ariel Helwani said in an interview on Figure 4 Daily, don't like hearing wrestling talk on MMA interviews and podcasts, too bad, because King Mo is going to do both. You're going to hear about it whether you like it or not.
Keeping with the Bellator theme, Joe Warren is switching from featherweight to bantamweight with the blessing from Bjorn Rebney.
Okay, well, he's already been beaten as the champ in one weight class, so I guess that's what you do these days, is you try your luck in another.
Well, Dana White has said he's still keen on having GSP fight the Spider Anderson Silva, but also another fight that's possible, Anderson Silva against Jon Jones.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I think it was the Ariel Helwani show where this point was made, and if it wasn't, maybe it was a Brian and Dave show, or maybe it was something on SureDog. I don't know where I heard it, but I thought this point was made perfectly, and I'm going to attribute it to Dave Meltzer, so correct me if I'm wrong and it was somebody else. He said that fight needs to be fought, the GSP Silva fight, at 174 pounds, because the more that GSP has to go up in weight, the worse it is for him, and the less Silva has to cut, the better it is for him. So a catchweight fight at 180 hurts GSP and helps Silva. So it needs to favor the champion in the lower weight class more than it does in the higher weight class, who probably has more pounds to give.
I wonder what Silva's walk-around weight is nowadays.
I would guess 220.
Jeez.
I mean, he looks natural at light heavyweight, which tells you he's probably above that.
Yeah. He's actually, there was a report this week, I think from Brazil, that Anderson Silva wants to fight in MMA for the next 6 years.
Well, if he's healthy and still at the peak, that's fine, but it remains to be seen, because we're waiting for Anderson Silva to screw up or lose a step, and that hasn't happened yet.
Dana White has also said since the UFC 151 show was canceled, he has not spoken to Jon Jones.
That's kind of weird considering they've got a pay-per-view coming up in 2 weeks. You'd think they'd talk.
Yeah. Well, staying with the Jon Jones theme here, Daniel Cormier called him out this week saying...
Okay, hold on a minute.
Wait. Let me finish.
No.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I got to vent. All of a sudden, I'm really sick of people calling out Jon Jones. Listen, no offense to Daniel Cormier or Chael Sonnen or anybody else, but all you fuckers who want to call him out because he's public enemy number one right now, you're just jumping on the bandwagon. Get in fucking line. If you want to make something out of this so badly, why don't you get in the cage and fight him?
Daniel Cormier called out Jon Jones and says they should be the next two coaches for the Ultimate Fighter.
Please, again, get in fucking line. Everybody wants a piece of Jon Jones right now. He's public enemy number one. People love to hate him. It's easy to call him out and say, I want to fight with him, or we should be coaches, or blah, blah, this, or blah, blah, that. What the fuck ever. Again, no offense to Daniel Cormier, but I've had it up to here with it. You know what? Either put up or shut up. Get in the cage with him and have a fight, or don't talk about him.
I was watching the Fight Network, and they were talking about this exact topic. And, shout out to Robin Black and the boys at the Fight Network. They put on a good show. They're saying the Ultimate Fighter is not the right vehicle for Daniel Cormier to make a splash with the UFC. If it comes to Daniel Cormier, what they need to do is to promote him on a Fox show. A lot more people will watch him on Fox than the Ultimate Fighter.
Or the co-main event of a pay-per-view is perfectly fine with me, because if you're number two to a title fight, people are going to remember that fight later on, especially if you have a big performance.
Killer Kev is chiming in saying he doesn't want a piece of Jon Jones, just a piece of his paycheck.
Well, don't we all? I mean, seriously, that's the other thing that's really starting to get under my skin. I think there's a lot of jealousy, as our friends at the O Show would say. It's like everybody just wants to hammer on Jon Jones because he's got the Nike deal and he's the light heavyweight champion and he's the one that does all the media appearances. And suddenly now it's easy for everybody to go, oh, fuck Jon Jones. That guy's arrogant. That guy's a punk. Well, you know what? Everybody's going to start loving him again after Vitor Belfort. So just shut the fuck up.
All right, now we're going to switch gears to what fights have been moved, canceled, what have you. And next weekend's UFC 152 has a minor tweak to it, as the janitor Vladimir Matyshenko has pulled out with an injury, and Matt Hamill fights his original opponent, Roger Hollett.
All right, well, whatever at this point. Everybody pulls out with an injury anymore, so I don't, at this point it's almost impossible to keep track.
It's just funny how it's like, oh, my original opponent's all better? Okay, I'll fight him.
Mm-hmm.
Sara McMann will be fighting Liz Carmouche at the Strikeforce show headlined by Daniel Cormier and Frank Mir.
Okay.
I like Liz Carmouche. She's one of the really top-tier fighters in the women's division, and, that's a tough fight for McMann there.
Mm-hmm. It is.
Now let's talk UFC 153, Stevie. Quentin Rampage Jackson is pulled out with an injury, although I don't know what the injury is. They haven't released it yet, unless you have some information I don't have.
No, it was just a tweet from Dana White saying that Rampage Jackson pulled out of the fight.
Okay. He's been forced out of the show, the co-main event against Glover Teixeira. Teixeira. And there's someone out there who actually wants to take Jackson's spot, Fabio Maldonado.
Well, I guess if you're going to do a replacement fight on a Brazilian show, make it a Brazilian fight and give the crowd something to cheer for.
Yeah, it's one of those things. We made that point before where, a lot of the fighters don't want to fight him because, if I beat him, I prove nothing. This guy's not proven in UFC, but if he beats me, he made a name off of me. Fabio's come in going, you're playing with house money, I'm playing with house money, let's just do this.
Exactly. To me, it strikes at me as the perfect time for him to step up and say, I want this fight, because he's got nothing to lose and Dana's got nothing to lose.
All right, and a foot injury has knocked out Jose Aldo, or whatever.
Oh, fucking, they can't make up their mind on that from week to week. It's spelled Jose, I'm going to say Jose.
So Jose Aldo's out of the fight. Eric Koch is out of the fight with an injury. So Frankie Edgar is on the sidelines for a bit. And as I said before, they're going to build towards a Aldo Edgar fight down the road. I would expect that to happen probably the first or second show of 2013.
I would think so, but I would also think that Aldo will still have to face Koch now. If they're both sidelined with an injury, then I would still think the original fight goes first, and then Edgar comes after that.
Maybe, but if you're Dana White and you're seeing dollar signs, do you put the original fight as planned, or do you put Edgar there?
Poor argument on your part, because Frankie Edgar has not been dollars in terms of pay-per-view buys, so it's really not a fair argument to make, because there's one fight is not more money than the other fight. It's the exact same thing.
Is that Dana White on line one over there?
No, I'm afraid not.
All right, now there's an interesting story here. Now I know I'm going to screw this up because it's a Swedish name, but Jorgen CRwth was scheduled to fight at UFC 154, or sorry, UFC on Fuel TV 5, and he has actually retired from combat sports, and that came out of left field a little bit, but
well, so did Cole Conrad retiring. I mean, what are you trying to say? It's guys have that choice to fight or not fight, and some of them are making that choice.
Yeah, but Conrad didn't have a fight in 17 days.
Okay, well, I mean, that's true. There's that difference, but if it was not a big paying fight, and it's certainly not a big card if it's on Fuel TV, well, you can have some sympathy for the guy saying, screw it, it's not worth it.
Well, it looks like his opponent, it's actually Fabio Maldonado. This is why I think prompted him to challenge Teixeira in Brazil. This is,
okay,
part A to part B.
One more time. Teixeira.
Teixeira.
Okay. Teixeira.
All right, moving on. Now Diabate looks like he might not have an opponent at UFC 154, but we all know that will probably change between now and then.
Yeah. Well, I got a completely different story for you. I don't know if you had this on your list, but did you see the story about a guy claiming fraudulent workers' compensation claims in MMA?
Oh, no. Who's this?
His name is Rafael Davis. So you don't know this story?
No, I don't.
Okay, well, unfortunately, part of the story just got blocked by a pop-up ad, so I got to scroll back now, but I'll try to give you the summary here in just a second as soon as the ad goes away. Fucking MMAJunkie.com. Thanks a lot. Too many fucking ads on this website. Rafael, where did that story go? Okay, here it is. Rafael Davis struck a plea with the Los Angeles District Attorney's Office that he got $30,000 that he has to pay back from being on disability as a city firefighter. And, of course, he went on disability because he was fighting MMA and got injured in his fights. So he was collecting workers' comp from the firefighters for basically getting injured, not on the job.
Bravo. There's that's all you need to do, just one clap.
One clap. The DA's office is going to dismiss 3 felony counts and reduce another to a misdemeanor as long as he pays it back.
So basically he's being charged for being a dumbass?
Pretty much.
Oh, frick. Okay. Let's see. Oh, man. Where was I? There's a good fight coming up between 2 Canadian fighters at UFC 154 as John Makdessi fights Sam Hands of Stone Stout.
Is it just me, or has Hands of Stone Stout been around like forever now?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely, but these are 2 good old Canadian boys. They're going to scrap.
Yeah, I swear that's a name I've been seeing on cards since like 2005.
Another fight that's been added to UFC 154 is Ivan Menjivar against the debuting Azamat Gashimov.
I'm going to assume you pronounced that correctly because I have no idea. I don't even recognize the name.
Oh, come on, Steve. When it comes to Europeans, I'm okay. It's those Mexican and Brazilian names, some of them are just, can I buy a vowel? It's crazy.
Yeah, it's because you're a hockey fan. If they're from Eastern Europe, you know how to pronounce it.
Oh, don't get me started on hockey, Stevie. I'm on suicide watch as it is right now.
On a completely different note, I got another story from you, and hopefully this one won't disappear under a pop-up ad. They found a home for The Ultimate Fighter Australia versus UK in the UK. It's going to air on their version of ESPN.
Oh, that's good.
Mm-hmm. Then the play schedule, actually, sorry, I've got the schedule. It's going to air Wednesdays on ESPN in the UK, and it will wrap up on December 5th, but outside of the UK and in Australia, it will air on Tough.tv.
Tough.tv. Okay. This week, I just want to make note for all the Canadian fans out there that the 2-hour premiere episode, if you don't have FX Canada, will be on Sportsnet for Ottawa. Here is Channel 27. It airs at midnight. So check your local listings, but for here it's Friday night at midnight for the 2-hour premiere episode of The Ultimate Fighter to fight into the house.
Very cool.
All right, let's see what else we got here, Stevie. Chris
I got
Weidman.
a story about Guy Fieri, but you can go ahead with Chris Weidman.
Chris Weidman fights Tim Boetsch at UFC 155.
Okay.
And just announced today, and this is the last news item I have, the returning Chris Lieben. He'll be fighting Carlos Vermola at UFC 155 in Las Vegas as well.
Oh, okay. Well, good to hear the Crippler's going to be taking another fight.
I hope he dyes his hair red again.
Mm-hmm. I hope he does pretty well in the fight.
Now, this Guy Fieri, that's the guy from Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives?
Yep, and apparently the UFC card that I'm going to in Minneapolis was directly influenced by him.
Huh?
Okay, I'm just going to read you what it says here on USA Today, because I actually found the story there. Fertitta and UFC were trying to secure a venue for UFC on FX5. With several attractive options available, Fertitta relied on a Food Network star to help make the decision, which ended up seeing the UFC choose Minneapolis Target Center to host the FX broadcast event. He says, "I'm not a big fancy food guy at all. My daughter got me into Guy Fieri's show. We sit down and watch it together. I put these different places in these different cities into my iPhone because I want to hit them when I go there. When we get to Minnesota, I'll hit 2 or 3 places because I like that kind of food."
That's the reason why?
If you believe this story at USA Today, Lorenzo Fertitta got them to book a UFC in Minneapolis because he wants to go to all the places Guy ate on Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives.
Wow.
You know, I can't argue with that kind of logic. In fact, I'm going to pull up that episode of Diners, Drive-Ins, and Dives, look up all the places Guy went, and I'll go to all of them myself.
What was that show I was watching? It's like Man versus Food. It has this like monster burger, and it was like, dear God, you're not going to eat that. And it's like, oh, man.
Yeah, that's every episode of Man vs. Food. The guy goes to different restaurants all around the country. He's been to a couple in Omaha, too. He just goes there and finds, like, the biggest food challenge. Like, you have to eat, 5 pounds of food in an hour, or you have to eat a sandwich bigger than your head in 30 minutes. Whatever the challenge is, the local challenge, he goes there and eats it.
You know what they should do? Combine Diners, Drive-In, and Dives with Epic Mealtime.
Okay, no, a 3-way. Diners, Drive-In, and Dives. Mealtime and Man vs. Food in a face-off. Who would win?
Just do it all at once.
Have Joey Chestnut on.
Oh, and just for kicks, we got to have Andrew Zimmerman from Bizarre Foods on there as well.
Okay, we got some breaking news here. The Brazil fight, UFC 153, main event time. The Spider, Anderson Silva, goes one-on-one against Stephan Bonnar?
Seriously?
According to USA Today.
Well, I guess you and I were on that website anyway, so it makes sense. And yeah, there it is. Dana White says it's done. It's a done deal.
Posted 7 minutes ago.
I'll have to put this episode up on YouTube then, because it's a breaking news episode of Glove Up or Shut Up.
Wow. I mean, okay, the odds are going to be huge against, like, Bonner's going to be the underdog of the year. But anything happens in May. I'm not saying I'm picking Bonner. No, I'm not saying that at all. But can you imagine, Stevie, can you just imagine if Bonner connects with a punch and Silva goes out?
If you had $50 that you couldn't do anything else with. If you literally had to bet it on MMA, you'd put $50 on that because you'd get like $4,000 back.
Oh man, that is like of all the people in that weight class, Stephan Bonnar?
Well,
What?
but you know what? I'm sure the thinking here, and you're going to forgive me for saying this, Stephan, if you're listening, is they want to fight where the hometown fans in Brazil know that Anderson Silva is going to have a great performance.
Does this fight go more than one round?
Does it go more than 1 minute?
Yeah, I think we should have Nick Kalugas on next week to discuss those odds.
Yeah, we got to break down the what are the odds he submits him in 30 seconds? What are the odds he knocks him out in under a minute? There's got to be some very interesting parlays on this one.
The only thing that's interesting is Silva's moving up to 205 for this fight.
Yeah, but like I just said earlier in the show, he looks natural at 205. He doesn't look chunky, so I don't think that's really a bad decision for him. I mean, he was going to fight at that weight anyway if he stepped in as a replacement for UFC 151. So, and he's done it before. He dominated Forrest Griffin when he did it, and he dominated what's that guy's name? The Sandman.
For God's sake, I can't think of his name right now.
You know who I'm talking about, though. He beat him.
I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, Stephan Bonnar, I mean, the last I saw him was an MMA Uncensored, and they're going back to a 1 hour show in 2 weeks with Ronda Rousey as the guest on the first show. But that's one thing about MMA Uncensored. It was a good show, but I don't understand why the hiatus. But now I guess we know why, because Stephan Bonnar had to take some time off, and now, I guess he was contemplating having a fight soon.
Yeah, well, that does make sense. It explains why he'd be away and why he would, they would take the time off if he was going to do some training to see if he'd be ready for that fight or not.
And, of course, who can forget Jon Jones is a former opponent of Stephan Bonnar.
That's true. And trying to find that James Irvin, the Sandman. That's
Irvin.
The guy.
Right.
Yep.
Interesting choice, though. I mean, if Silva beats Bonnar, which, 9 times out of 10 he probably will, but you got to think 1 out of 10. There's always that 1 out of 10 shot. You never know. But say Silva does beat Bonnar in October, does this hurt the fight for GSP? Hurt or help the fight against GSP, or does it hurt and help the fight with Jon Jones?
I'm honestly not even going to be able to speculate on that because, one, I'm not sure who that would help or hurt just based on the scenario. And two, you had the question of, what are the odds of Bonnar getting a fluke win? Well, I had to go all the way back to 2006 to find a fluke win, and it was Yushin Okami beating Anderson Silva by DQ from an illegal kick. And before that, his only legitimate loss was in 2004 to a flying scissor heel hook from Ryo Shonen.